In this tutorial, we're going to look at some of the built-in number features that were added in ES6 that are available for use on the number and math object. So the first new numerical function that's available with ES6 is quite a useful function if you want to check whether a number has actually been parsed correctly and isn't actually a not a number. And the function that we can use to test our variable, or indeed any other value, is number.isNotAnumber, which will obviously give us a false value back if we pass an actual number directly to the function, but when we call it with the variable that we defined above, you can see that the function returns a true value. So this is actually really useful if you want to test some data that's been returned from an API or indeed some user input, and you're not totally confident that the data that you'll get will actually be able to be parsed as a number. You could of course do this with some value checking, but the static isNotAnumber function provided on the number object is a convenient function to do this for us. The second function that we'll look at on the number object is probably a little bit less common to use, which is the isFinite function. So basically this function on the number object will always return true if the value that we pass into it is a finite number, which basically means any number that we pass to it other than the special infinity value, which when we pass that to the isFinite function gives us a false value back. So again, probably not a function that you're going to be using regularly, but just useful to know that it is available if you need it. The other two functions that were introduced are actually on the math object, and the first is for truncating a decimal number, which, as you can see in the result on the right hand side, actually just removes the fractional part of our decimal number, and it doesn't matter what we put in there, it will always be removed and the whole number will be returned. So you might think this does exactly the same thing as the math.floor function that's already available in JavaScript. But let's see how the result differs if we provide a negative value. And that's because although the math.floor function does round down to the lowest part of the whole number, in this particular instance, negative 43 is actually closer than negative 42, so the math.floor function rounds it down to minus 43. So if you absolutely want to be sure that you're removing the fractional part of a number, you can trust that the math.trunc function will do this for any type of number. So the final function we'll look at is the math.sign function, which, as the name suggests, will indicate whether a number is negative or positive. So for a negative number we get a result of negative 1, and for a positive number we get a value of 1, and if we pass a value of 0, the value returned by the math.sign function is 0. So that's just a quick overview of the number functions that were introduced into ES6, some quite useful and some not so useful, but knowing about them will help you if you need to use them in your code.